my order except for stuff to put pipe together today. Son of a.
Okay, where they're at.
Okay,
I
ready?
need those first thing tomorrow morning.
Coolers
Don't
right
forget
there,
that.
no big deal.
Yeah.
Greg is over at the library.
Yeah, I saw it.
Texted me.
Oh, okay.
Going to executive session.
Yes, and then they're gonna come back out,
Greg
so.
is at the library.
He's gonna be, he's over at the library.
Okay, because then we're going to do executive session.
Well, you're not to watch them, good.
Huh?
But you're not to watch them.
No, I was just told.
You what? Oh, you want to do the executive
You go over and wake him up?
He's awake.
library.
Quiet up there.
We told
Are we
you.
ready?
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order, please. Solid Waste Workshop Meeting, Monday, October 28th, 2019, 6 p.m. Heidrich.
Aye.
Holtmeyer.
Aye.
Obermark.
Aye.
Patke.
Here.
Pettit. Here. Scornia. Sullentrup.
Here.
Wessels.
Here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You get the floor.
Oil these chairs, I think.
Okay. Good evening, council. So in our quest to ensure that our solid waste collection operations, which is refuse and recycling, is working as efficiently as possible, and we're meeting the level of service that is required by those two operations, Darren and I and other staff, Tony and Andrea, we all kind of thought it'd be a good idea to get together and kind of talk about where we're at with our solid waste collections, once again, recycling and refuse. As you know, it's a very labor-intensive operation, which our guys proudly do every single day. They do a very good job at it. It's not about, this discussion is not necessarily about the level of service that we are providing. It's more about, is there ways to expand the recycling operation, specifically to get cardboard in the mix, because in the Amazon world, where things are double, triple boxed, we see a lot of cardboard that is being generated from our citizens. So in that coupled with the volatile recycling market, sorry, good, all right. That coupled with the volatile recycling market, where the commodity of recycling is essentially not worth basically anything at this point. We're trying to figure out ways to make it a viable program to where we can continue into the future. So I'm just going to go through a quick PowerPoint. It more is just to kind of trigger some discussion. If anyone has any questions, concerns as we go through this, let's raise it. The idea, like I said, was an open discussion, just kind of where we're at, why this is even an issue for us, because obviously we've been operating this way for a long, long, long time. So why is it different now? So again, I think I hit on this a little bit. Our goals, and this is just 4 goals that we just somewhat came up with. Number 1 is to provide the highest level of service for solid waste collection. We strive for that every single day. I know you all get some calls about collections, but I know Tony and his crews, and honestly, he just got an attaboy from a citizen today, or last Friday, about just our operation and how we handle things. So that's a number 1 goal. That's probably, if we were to go into a contracted situation, that would be probably the biggest concern we would have, is how do we meet those level of service goals. Second goal would be keeps rates as low as possible. As we go through this, you will see that we do have the lowest rates around us just generally speaking, for Pacific, Eureka, Wentzville, those type of things. Number 3, expand recycling, allow for cardboard curbside. So if you remember, we were going down the path about a year and a half ago to purchase a single stream truck, which was essentially a trash truck painted blue with recycling. We would haul that to a sorting facility in Earth City. What we determined is that the manpower to go from our current operation, which is literally the workers pick aluminum and plastic and put it in different containers to where it's not commingled, is the highest labor intensive. This would be a single stream operation. We take it to a sorting facility. Now that commodity wouldn't be worth much, but it would save us a lot in manpower. So there's an offset here on a commodity that really doesn't have a lot of value anyway. Value in as far as hard dollars. We all know recycling has value. It just may not be in the money sense. And then reduce cost. And that's probably the biggest one to talk about tonight, because it is a pretty expensive operation the way we do it today. Anybody have any questions on the goals? I think it all makes sense. So how much trash does the city generate? So that's just trash and recycling. But how much do we really generate? Nobody really knows. The city, we generate approximately 5,000 tons per year. That's city limits inside. We track that. We could see when it goes up. We could see when it goes down. Christmas time, obviously, it's a little higher. The landfill takes in approximately 25,000 tons per year. That's an approximate number, plus or minus 10%. And that does vary as well. So when we raised our rates to what they are, you actually saw the tonnage go down, but the revenue kind of went up because obviously it was an offset. Prior to, we were so cheap on our rates, we were getting trash from everywhere, where now it's a little more localized. So what that does is it really helps our longevity for our own citizens, which is a net positive. At least I think we all agreed that it was. Recycling generates approximately 500 tons per year. So you can imagine those green bins, 500 tons of literally just sorting things out and then hauling to the highest bidder in the St. Louis area. So it just gives you a feel for what we generate. So the city generates approximately 20% of the total tonnage to the landfill each year. The remaining percentage is utilized by county residents and other communities via contracted haulers. So the other trash man is one of our largest haulers. He does more of the county type stuff. He's actually my trash hauler. So more rural areas, kind of the cutoff lines, Franklin County, Gasconade County line before you start going to Cuba. I think Republic utilizes it, and then Meridian, just the various contractor haulers. So it's kind of all over.
John,
Any questions? Yeah.
when they, like when you have your trash picked up by, and we'll just say the other
whoever,
trash man, whoever it is, they have limits on what you can pick up? Has to be in a container?
Generally speaking, yes.
Yes, okay.
It's not. It can't be scattered. They're not going to pick up trash that a vermin would get into or something like that. So I would say it's really no different than what we do today. There is limits on containers. So if it's a heavy item, we would get charged more.
Okay.
Which is pretty typical. You know.
Okay.
Do you
I would say
recycle?
for me personally. Oh, I'm sorry. What was it?
Do you guys recycle at your house?
I do not. It's
They
we
offer
can utilize a city recycling facility if we so choose, but we do not. No, because again, I think that recycle. Is there a reason why? I mean, it's just not convenient. That's what it comes down to, and that's where the curbside recycling is important because it's a convenience factor. You know, and we'll get into that a little bit.
Okay.
No, I do not.
Just for the general public, what do we recycle?
What do we recycle? I'd have to. Tony might have to chime in here, but aluminum cans, various plastics. He would know the numbers. I don't know them off the top of my head.
1 and 2.
1 and 2. There you go. Glass, brown and white glass, and what was the other one? Was there another one? I think
Paper.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Paper.
And paper. There we go. Sorry, guys. We do not do cardboard though curbside. That's the important part. So and I don't know the numbers, we haven't necessarily looked at a trash can and see how much cardboard's in a box. All that I know is, personally speaking, like Amazon, the Amazon world, everything's double boxed. There's a lot of cardboard that gets thrown away. We're taking loads from, for example, a couple of our retail facilities where you're talking dump trucks loads of cardboard gets hauled to our landfill, once a month. That does not get recycled. And we don't necessarily turn them away. But the problem with cardboard, too, is it doesn't weigh much when it's dry. So since you're based off a weight system on charging, you're filling up your landfill with essentially something that fluffs up. So we got to figure out a way to
When you had, in your goals, you included one of them around cardboard.
Yeah.
Was that to reduce then?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, the idea would be is to reduce that flow, that trash flow into the landfill and then move it to a different location, to basically open up space to either be sold for the future or just for the longevity of our landfill. I know Andrea and I were even working on trying to get a DNR permit to potentially look at shredding the cardboard and then mixing it with our soil as a 50-50 daily cover, which to me is another form of recycling. You're taking a product and you're repurposing it, which isn't that what recycling really is. Even though it's still going in a landfill, we could cut back on our soil costs, and then it actually compacts better. So we're looking at a bunch of different items that doesn't necessarily play into this conversation, but I think that's the kind of stuff that we all need to kind of look at outside the box about how do we meet these goals, because as we go through this, you'll see how expensive things are.
And John, really quickly, so that 500 tons per year, that's recycling as a whole, not specific to city residents.
That's recycling that is generated through our recycling center as a whole. So you're correct. If there's people outside in the outside community that utilize it, it would be in that number.
Thank you.
The vast majority of that comes from residents, so.
I know we're talking about recycling, but isn't glass the best compaction you can have?
It could be argued, yes. Yeah, glass is great. I mean, it essentially, it'll grip anything fluffy because it holds things in. It weighs a lot. It doesn't take up a lot of space. Yeah, glass would be one thing that we would look at as we go through this, maybe we cut back on getting curbside glass. Because again, and I'll go through, they're going to haul glass tomorrow. The street department will haul glass tomorrow. It's going to take 4 guys 4 hours out of the street department, which they are actually pooled. Their man hours are pooled out of a different pot of money. So as we go through this financial snapshot, they're not even included in these dollar numbers because they're actually getting paid for out of the street department. Okay? So 4 guys for 16 man hours and 3 tandem loads to St. Louis to get $590. And that's just to haul it. That's not to pick it up. That's not to compact it. That's not to do anything. So just give you some perspective on where we're at. Where, you know, if it adds value to a landfill operation, I don't know why it wouldn't go in a landfill, other than, you know, getting over the hump of what's the best use for it. So we'll talk about it a little more. So this is just, I put together just a quick financial snapshot. Now, this is a snapshot. This is not, this is rounded up and down a little bit, but just gives you some feeling on where we're at. So, and this was taken off the last 5 years of a 10-year budget. So, refuse, which is trash collection. So it's broken up. Green is surplus, red is deficit. So greens we're making money, red we're losing money. What you see is yearly surplus deficit of $50,000. So we are, every single year, we actually gain revenue approximately $50,000 in the trash collection side, okay? Now, in that though, every 5 years, we have a capital investment of around $180,000. That is essentially a truck. That does vary. It could go out to 7 years, 8 years, but just give you some round numbers on where we're at. So that does generate a little bit of revenue at the end of that 5 years. The landfill, which is the biggest revenue producer, it actually is a yearly surplus. I don't know why I did 345. It should have been 350, but $345,000, and that has a capital investment of approximately $200,000 every 5 years. Now, what is that? That's the compactor. We just $300 and whatever some odd dollars to rehab the compactor to get it to go for the next 6 to 7 years. Could be a dozer, could be the covers, could be anything, but that's just a round number. Now, keep in mind, at the end of the life of this landfill, this current cell, because we are operating in our last cell, okay? And we do not necessarily have a recommendation on what to do afterwards yet. So let's kind of hold that off for a different conversation. But we do know that a transfer station was somewhere around $2.5 million. We do know that our current cell, we built it for around $1.5 million. So if it was a transfer station, if it was a landfill expansion, after year 2025, that may be a little early. It could maybe go out to 2026, just round numbers. It's going to cost $1.5 to $2.5 million to build it again, okay? So just keep that in mind. So where's that $345,000 that you make per year go to? Well, to the next thing. What's the next thing look like? And that's the idea. That was the concept. And I think most of you were here when we talked about that, opening that next cell. So we're trying to meet that. Well, we're going to meet that goal. So recycling and compost. So it's got a yearly deficit, and this is sticker shock to me when I first saw it, of approximately $270. That varies from $260 to $300 depending on what you buy or how much things are. But $270, $250,000 a year, round numbers, that we lose in a recycling compost operation. Now, you don't have to make money in everything you do. I'm not saying you need to make money in recycling and compost. I'm just saying that it needs to be somewhat financially viable. That has a capital investment around $120. Once again, it's got 2 trucks. You got a compactor. I don't know if anybody's been to a recycling center in a while, but the pavement needs some work, which you're looking at $40,000 maybe there. And I know the compactor, and I believe a truck was budgeted, which is, those up, you're looking at a $220,000 investment on the capital side when you're losing $250,000 a year. Is that a lot of numbers there, but so those 3 items, 1, 2, and 3, are not separate pieces. They're all part of what's called the solid waste fund, which is where the money is essentially somewhat lumped in together. So after those 5 years, your cash on hand, so dollars in the bank, once everything shakes out after 5 years, is approximately $125,000. What that tells me is that we're running right where we essentially should be if you didn't have to build something after 5 years. And you want operations to run equal. That means your revenue coming in and your expenses are the same, which is where taxes should go to. However, we have to build something that's going to cost $1.5 million after 5 years.
At least 1.5. If-
Correct, at
2.5
least.
if we go to the transfer route.
Right. So if you look at that, you see 2 greens and 1 red. I mean, you can kind of see what I'm trying to achieve here. The only way you can increase the 2 greens is increase fees, which is something that we're not proposing at all, or you reduce the red. And that's kind of what the conversation is, which is reduce the deficit. So one thing I wanted to do was, we know what we pay. We pay, and I'm going to flip ahead here, we pay $14.15 if you're a non-senior. Seniors pay $8.50. So just to give you an idea, that includes trash, recycling, and yard waste. So what do other communities pay? Let's just look at what everybody else is paying. I mean, you have to do that if you want to make a good decision. So I just chose a few. Literally, this is a Google search going to their city website. So if I'm wrong by a couple cents, I apologize. But unions $15.53, and the parentheses are seniors. Okay, unions $15.53, $14.50. That includes trash, recycling, yard waste, and a trash can. Okay. Winsville, 15 and 15. I don't think there's a rebate unless I didn't find it, but it's the same thing. Trash recycling. Eureka, 25. Why are they 25? I don't know. I know New Haven's is somewhere around 21, 22. They have trash picked up twice a week. So my guess is Eureka's probably picked up twice a week. Herman's, 1503. It's trash recycling. Sullivan's, 1385, which I don't know how they got so cheap either, but just gives you an idea that we're somewhat in the realm. I mean, we're within 10% here. Which is interesting because none of those communities own their own landfill. Yeah, you know what I mean? You would think that we would be substantially cheaper. We own our own end result, right? But we're not. So as I go to the next page, so what do we pay? We pay $14.15, $8.50. Now this is where you kind of got to dive into this. It's somewhat misleading because it does not, that rate does not include the recycling subsidy, and I'm calling it a subsidy from the landfill. Landfill's making money, recycling's losing money. So all you're doing is taking one pot of money to offset the subsidy to buy the rate down, essentially, for the citizens. That's what's happening, okay? So if I spread that $270,000 a year loss, go back to the deficit part, by the 5,780 users, essentially, per week, that's actually $3.89 a month subsidy that the landfill is paying for to buy down the rates of the recycling operation. Make sense? So if you add that number to the $14.15, our actual all-in costs for recycling and refuse is $18.04. Now go back to the last page. It's quite a bit higher than everyone else, almost 20%. Does that make sense? I mean, you guys, at least we know how it kind of got there. Now, here's the other thing. Only 40%-ish people recycle. That number could vary a little bit too because we don't actually go count green cans. You know, it's a feel number. But if 100% of the people in town were to recycle, they don't now, but if they were, you would conceivably have to double operations because we're tapped out on our routes now. We don't have any truck, there's no extra trucks. We'd have to double the manpower to get 100%. All I did was I took the 389, multiplied it by 2, and then added it to the 14.15. You'll see that our hypothetical rates will approach $22. All these other towns, that's everybody. Everybody's getting trash. Everybody's getting recycling. This is that number would be everybody, $22 all in. So that's again, the citizens don't see that number because you have a subsidy. The landfill's paying for it. But that's really the all-in cost to the actual solid waste fund. And if the goal is to know what we're going to be doing after 5 years and have a little bit of cash on hand, we have to know what that number is in order to make a decision in the future. Any questions on that? It's kind of convoluted. Okay, perfect. So there's some other soft costs. I kind of hit them already. The financial snapshot only includes refuse, compost, and recycling, landfill, personnel, and equipment costs. So it's just that funding source. The people that work, the collectors, the guys that work out at the landfill. The actual operating cost is, I should not have put much higher, but is higher. okay? The street department backfills collection and landfill fairly frequently. Luckily, we're back to staff, full staff, but for, pick a number, 7 months, 8 months last year, 6 months maybe, we were literally, your street department workers who are supposed to be fixing streets were working at the landfill all the time. Again, those hours, those dollars that we sent out there were not in that financial snapshot because there's no way to break it out, okay? So that's why these are fairly conservative, I feel. But on any given month, we're talking 60 might be a shade high, but basically one person a week per month is being subsidized by the street department to go work in collections and landfill and everything else. So again, you don't see that on a financial snapshot. So these are just a couple options. Honestly, these are just made for us to start talking about stuff. Obviously, we could continue as is. Nobody's saying no, we can't continue as is. We've already showed you where you're going to be after 5 years. So it's just 5 years down the road, we got to make a decision on what the next thing looks like. Sorry, it's a little small. Some of the pros, so I just did some pros and cons. We got a high level of service. We got 1 point of contact. Well, Tony and myself, but 1 point of contact, full rate control, and then we have comfort. We know what we're doing. Everyone knows how to do it. Cons, you got a higher average cost. Recycling costs are very high, and the fund balance for the next disposal phase is only $125,000. That's that 125 that I've been kind of talking about. If we did contracted hauling, one of the pros, maybe average costs may be lower. And how do I say that? Because I went back and I looked at what the other communities were paying. So quite honestly, it could be lower. Recycling would be expanded to cardboard potentially. That meets one of our goals there. Route consolidation. So one of the concepts would be is that maybe trash trucks would only run in town Monday through Thursday because they want to get into town and out of town.
Or 4 days a week.
Yeah, 4 days a week. I'm sorry. Yeah. And then the fund balance for the next disposal phase could approach 1 million to 1.25 million. How do you get from 125 to 1.25 million? I'm not buying trucks for the next 5 years. I mean, all it takes is 3 trucks and you're in it for another 400 or 500 grand. Okay. So that's one of the potential pros. One of the cons, level of service concerns. How do we guarantee that the haulers can give us our level of service that we need? The other one is point of contact. So you have right now you have one individual. Now you'd be working through maybe a secondary company. We don't know what the future rate increases are. So, if this was a 5-year contract, we don't know what 6 years look like. We would hopefully set up any bid proposal with an automatic renewal, but in that renewal, there would be some sort of a contract discussion. So I don't know what year 6 would look like. We know what year 1 through 5 is because you got a bid for the proposal is we'd get a bid for it. And there'd be a learning curve, whatever that learning curve may be. Number 3, we get a lot of these updated equipment, go to robotic collections. The one-armed bandit would be another way to say it. It reduces manpower, which is an obvious concern. Cons, it's got a very high startup cost. I don't have the number what a truck would be, but we looked at them. It was basically double what a standard truck would be. So 400 or 500 grand would be the best I could come up with. You have to go to uniform receptacles, so you'd have to have the toter style, which is a good thing because I think we could still utilize those, but that's about a $250,000 investment if you were to choose to give one of those away. Our alleys are 12 foot, so some of those trucks would not be able to service the alleys. You'd have to change. I think, Darren, you may have your trash in the back. You'd have to change to how you go to the front, maybe. And then potential street damage, which we've heard about this just a little bit, but if that truck stops in the same spot every time, it actually puts a lot of stress on that wheel path, where right now that truck kind of moves. If you can kind of vision, the driver's not driving and stopping in the same spot every single week, where if you had a one-armed bandit, you would expect it to because the can would be set at the same spot. Makes sense? Number 4, and this is, again, just eliminate curbside recycling, go to recycling substations. This is probably one I don't like the most, but you would reduce essentially, or curbside recycling would essentially go away and you just provide various substations around town. Now, that's not good because obviously you have various spots around town, and how do you police those substations? Okay, but it does cut cost. And people wouldn't do it. So you'd have an increase in, not people wouldn't do it, but not as many people would.
You had said that recycling was 40%. How long you been tracking that?
You know, we've been doing counts on the toters, which I can give you that number. I know that number to the click, essentially. But, you know, we've just been getting a feel for it over the last year, just a feel for what do we think it is. And like I said, it's literally driving and seeing how many people want to block and just making a educated guess.
But sometimes you got people that'll go ahead,
That won't do
set
it.
the green bin out every week.
Right.
They just, you know, they do it every other week or whatever. So it's a lot
It's
harder
just
to
a
go
tough
ahead.
number to get. So, like I said, it's an educated. I would say if you had to put a number on the where that 40% is on the educated guess range, that would probably be on the higher end of the educated guess range. Make sense? So, sorry, it's just a hard number to get. And then maybe the last one we could do to offset some of these costs is recycling surcharge for users. So one of the pros is, and what that is if you want to recycle, if you have a green bin, maybe you would have a $2 extra charge to recycle because it does cost that much money.
Then
A lot of communities do that.
You'll lose people and your trash will go higher.
Yep.
Would not be surprised. I do not disagree with that. Yep. And it's additional cost for the users. So
So it doesn't help your goals that we
No.
talked.
it doesn't.
about at the beginning.
And keep in mind, these are just, I just kind of thought that, you know, everybody would have something in their mind, maybe what hey, do we look at this up? This is just stuff that we just kind of threw up there. We didn't necessarily dive into those things. So basically the gist of it is we are here essentially until I can't sit up here and tell you that we are doing the best thing as far as financially viable and the best solution for our recycling operation with the volatile market. I don't know that because we've never gone out and got a number for contracted hauling. And until we get that number, I think what I'm requesting is essentially that you give us the go to go out and put a bid proposal out with trash and recycling to see what that number is. It does not mean we have to go with the number. It does not mean we have to change anything. All that it is we have to have that number so we can have a good educated discussion to make sure we're doing the right thing. What does that look like? The proposal that we would put out would be you could utilize your same cans that you have today. So you would have up to 35 gallons. It would be a Shagger method collection unless the contractor came up with a way to, you know, to do something different. But it would be a Shagger method collection and then your toter cans would still be allowed. The ordinance doesn't change. So there's no change on the front end user. It's all the same. Recycling would go to a single stream situation. Now, we've heard all the negativity in single stream, so we'll talk about that. But it would go to a single stream situation with the goal being that cardboard gets in the single stream canisters. Okay, that's the biggest concern, I guess, that we have in the landfill side of things. That would be picked up every other week. Okay, every other week collection on that.
But you get a bigger canister.
And you would get a can of 64 gallons or larger, depending on what the contractor comes up with. So you'd have a city, and you would be required to have a can. So you are in this. It would not be an optional thing. So you get one dropped off. If we were to go live on this, you'd get one dropped off. It would be nice, pretty blue, and you could use it. You don't have to use it. Nobody really cares if you use it, other than you have that option to you. And those would all be under one contract. You would have twice a year bulky collection, just like we do today. Our guys wouldn't be doing it. Their people would be doing it. Yard waste would be done by us. We would continue to do yard waste. The reason for that being is yard waste is somewhat more specialized as far as dump truck, those type of things. It's a different operation. So we'd kind of leave that off to the side. And the contract would essentially be with the city. So we would take collections, our monetary rate would come in through your utility billing, and then the city would then cut a check, whatever the terms of the contract would be. So there'd be no change on your bill as the citizen. So that's just a couple of the parameters that we would look to kind of set this up as.
Do any of the other municipalities do mandatory?
They all do. It's all mandatory.
Mandatory.
But recycling. You have a
Recycling with
bin.
trash collection.
Well, I won't say all.
Most of them.
Yes, all of them
Well,
typically
and
do.
is it compulsory or is it mandatory? Because if you pay the service, I can't really force you to recycle, can
No, no, no. It's mandatory in the sense of that you have to receive a can.
it? And pay the,
So maybe I used the wrong word, but yes,
You might as well recycle it.
you might as well. And if you had that delivered to you, if it was single stream, what are the negatives there? Now we could kind of get into this discussion of single stream. We currently have the best operation out there. That is a fact. When you are literally sorting materials in the one and you bale that, you have the highest commodity that you can sell to the open market. There is no disputing that. Nobody has to sort it. You all did it curbside. It's all done. The problem with that is the manpower to get from point A to point B. I mean, you guys have all seen it. You're literally, you know, I mean, it's a high risk operation potentially. I mean, it's high labor intensive. So the problem that the single stream market is having, and I could be corrected here, but the problem is that the citizens or the users are throwing things away that should not be in a recycling bin, such as a pizza box full of pizza. Diapers, baby diapers would go into it. Waxy paper would be one. It's an educational thing that the single stream world has to overcome. So you hear these horror stories. But we've already done that. They're working from the bottom up. We're already at the top. You see what I'm saying? That educational piece is already there. So it really becomes a thing of making sure that we don't lose that education to our users when we go to single stream. Just because it all goes in one bin doesn't mean you shouldn't wash it out still. It just all goes in one bin. And I think if we went from that perspective with cardboard, I think you're really capturing a lot there. Again, even though we have the best commodity, it took us, we made $45,000 last year in that commodity. It's the best thing you can get, but it's not worth anything.
We made
At this time.
45,000, but we didn't take out the street workers' time.
Well, you did. Yeah, you did. Oh, no, correct.
I mean,
That's
essentially,
50
Sorry,
to
I
60
misunderstood.
hours.
You're correct. You did not, right. So that wasn't in that number. Now, is that a huge number? Probably not, but it's a number.
probably that number.
That number is in that $270,000 deficit, just so we all know. Like you don't take the 270 and subtract off 45. It's in that number. So all that, like I said, all we're really asking is just kind of a thumbs up. If anybody has any ideas, I'm open for anything. It's just something we have to look at. And if we don't, we could continue as is. We just need to understand that in 5 years, we got to come up with a different funding mechanism to figure out what we're going to do with the next trash situation. Because right now, it's really taking large pieces out of that funding source.
I think we just need to reiterate one more time that the general public, that we're not here to raise costs. We're not here to eliminate the trash trucks in town or jobs or anything like that, but just say it for me, John, that we're just looking for numbers to compare.
We're taking a look at the options of what we can do to decrease that cost of that recycling, probably keep trash the same and keep it at the level of service that everybody's used to.
Level of service the goal would be level of service remains the same or increases, and we have a somewhat of a track record with that, even with the airport situation. It just
Be
remains
able to
the same.
add cardboard
We've gotten
and
better.
not add cost.
That's right.
I mean, that's essentially what we're talking about.
And really, if you think about this, we did this somewhat with the toter situation a little bit. That was somewhat of an added cost because we didn't buy them for you. The citizens just had an option to go buy one, and we're seeing 10% usage right now, which that's the equivalent of 9 tons a week that our shaggers don't have to lift. That's where we're at today. That's a huge number. That's 4.5 tons per person that does not have to be lifted by the backs on a truck.
One of the things I asked John to take off of this was the, workman's comp claims that we have too with regards to it, because those workers are at a higher risk. I just don't have a quantitative number.
They're rated higher
Yes.
than the, correct, Mary? There's a different line item for,
Yeah, refuse collection is the highest paid position that we pay to workers' comp.
There we go.
and is, we're in a low unemployment situation. So, we have openings within the city. I mean, the workers themselves, we'll work through all that. But until we know what the number is for contracted hauling, I can't tell you that we're doing the 100% right thing. I can tell you from a level of service and the cost we are, but remember, the landfill's subsidizing the whole thing. It's catching all those inefficiencies.
John, hey, are you gonna open this up before we can talk to you a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, come on up.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Michael Bell, I live in Washington.
Come on up.
Yeah, Mike, why don't you come on up, because, hey, Mike.
Mike,
We're
Mike,
recording
I
it.
can hear you back here. You're going so fast. You're a good car salesman, but I appreciate that. You gotta get up here and talk in this so people can hear, I can hear you, okay? Now, here, listen. You can answer this. Listen, be quiet, let me answer you.
Be quiet.
Okay, do we have to, are we mandated by some kind of a law to have a recycling center?
No.
no.
We have something, Mayor, about having a, back in about 2000, a long time ago, before you guys' time probably, back in about 2000, they had some kind of deal where a town with 5,000 people had to have a recycling program. Probably don't
It's not
have that in your records even. Okay, just listen. I know you like to talk.
Hold on, you're talking too fast.
Okay, okay. Now, you got 25,000 tons a year going in is it a profit to have all these companies dumping in there? That's an advantage to our landfill?
Yes.
So you're making money?
Yes.
Say yes? Correct. All right. Okay, I'm not gonna take very long. I ain't got all night. Okay. If we don't have to have a recycling center, why can't we just put it on the dump? That's what the people in Washington are asking, okay? Go out on the street where you guys live and ask these people. I did. I asked my neighbors, do we have to have one? Can we just put it on the dump? We can. How much more is it gonna be a year if you put it on the dump? I recycle, but I won't if we can do it without doing all that extra cost. You're talking about $8.50 a month more now. How much more are you gonna raise it next year? You know, to keep the recycling thing going. Then you have this thing where you have, just a minute, let me see what I wrote down. Recycling surcharge users. In other words, if I use recycling, are you going to charge me extra? And if I don't, you won't? What kind of question would that be to people? They won't. I can answer you now. You live out in an area you have what do you pay a month? Is it okay if I ask you that? What do you pay a month?
20, I believe.
And
$20.
a lot of places are higher than that out in the country.
$20.
I'm surprised it's that cheap.
It's cheap.
So that's a good deal. We probably should take our trash out there. But anyway, see, because what I'm saying, if you go to a transfer station down the road, and you might have said all this, and we couldn't hear you. Okay, you might have had it on them small figures. I couldn't read them. Okay, but anyway, because I'd like to stand up here and talk to all the people, and not just these.
Okay, that's him.
Yeah, maybe these. Is this the first time the council's heard about this?
No, we've got a.
What are you talking to them for then? Talk to all of us, okay? That's what I'm saying to you. Talk to all of us, all right? Mayor, talk to all of us.
Okay, well, let's
Put it in-
answer your question.
Well, no,
okay?
we've had a
been talking
committee
about this.
that's been talking about this for some time.
Because if we don't need
Yeah.
a recycle center, let's get rid of it. If it's costing us money.
I want your phone number, so when those people that want recycling call me,
Yeah, hey.
I'm going to pass it on to you. Because
I don't live too far. I don't live too far from you.
Boy,
Okay, well, let's let someone else. We've
Yeah.
got your.
Yeah.
Let's let
You got
someone
somebody?
else say something.
But
okay.
talk to everybody, okay?
Thank you.
Hold
Sorry.
it. Here comes someone else.
Well, I think it's important. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, do you need to say something, John?
No,
Who all can use the recycling place down there? Can anybody use it? I mean, can you?
Yes.
Well, I got a thing in. There's people bringing brush in from Union, Pacific, and everything, and hauled in down at our landfill. They unload it for them. They grind it all up, and probably the same people come in with these big trucks and get them loaded. Why are we throwing all that away?
If you're speaking brush, now brush is the recycling center when it comes to your bottles, your cans, those type of things. Those are open to anyone within the public, whether you're a citizen or not. The brush situation, we do try to manage that. That was meant to be just for citizens only,
Correct.
Or any commercial development that would be going on within the city limits that we can manage. Now, I could tell you that I personally have escorted individuals out of town that were utilizing it as that were not citizens of Washington. So we do police that to a level. That's why kind of the hours are a little more a little more narrow, so our people can police that. Do we sit there and, is there a city sticker? There's not. Do we sit there and have you flash an ID? We do not. Again, because it would take an extra person to do it. So it is a little bit of a loose police, but there is a policing situation that occurs. So your brush situation, no, that's for city residents only. Do others use it? I would say yes, they probably do.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
But that
So
answers
we
your
ought to
question.
stop that.
What's that?
They ought to stop that, I mean.
Correct, and that's where you play that. Do you want to add another individual to police that, or do you look at the cost benefit?
Okay, the guy's running loader. The guy comes in and asks him where he's from.
For sure, we could.
He could, I go down there and work a while.
I understand, and we do that to the best of our abilities. I can tell you that. Can it be better? We can always do better. So.
I go in there quite a bit and get a couple of it. I went in the other day, and got two guys in there. They had a great big trailer load. Well, hey, they got that off. Then they had some great big loads they got off. Your operator spent probably 30, 45 minutes there.
I understand. And I don't know specifically where that material was generated from, but at least that gives you some background on what the intent is.
Thank you. I think we have,
When that started out, you could only get 2 loads a year, and then for when Barney Hillen was in, you had to pay to get it. Now, you go in there, and in fact, I'm gonna come in there with my son-in-law's truck one of these days, and I live right here, and he's got a big dump trailer. I'm gonna load it up and take it up and dump it in my yard.
I understand.
okay, let's let someone else, we have someone else who wants to speak. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Amy Egan. That's too, okay, thank you. I've lived in Ward 2 for about 30 years now, and thanks for offering this opportunity to collaborate about this issue. I appreciate all your efforts to lead and manage the city in this area and all the areas. I appreciate the opportunity to recycle curbside. I appreciate our curbside sorting process. I understand how much less contamination happens because you do that so well. I appreciate that you do everything in your power to keep the costs low for the citizens. As you explore options for how to handle the city's solid waste, I ask that you identify ways to continue and expand recycling so that we can divert more waste away from landfills. I feel an obligation to future generations, including the kids I know, as well as the kids I don't know, to pass along an environment on this earth that's as healthy as possible. I understand that there are recent global changes in demand for contaminated recyclables, but I believe the solution is to contaminate less, not recycle less. Some local communities have implemented dual stream systems. I also believe that citizen education campaigns, like putting landfill on a trash can, makes us think before we throw something in that can. It does for me. And I believe that a citizen education campaign with optional programs like you've offered would allow concerned citizens to know what they can do to help and take action to recycle more and better. I believe we need to pursue as many solutions as possible to reuse, reduce, and recycle to protect the environment for future generations. Our family's making it a priority to reduce our use of single-use plastics. I go to the restaurant with a cup, my cup. I fill my cup up. I use backyard composting now, so that stuff's not going to the landfill. And I want to continue to recycle as much as possible. I know I'm just speaking for myself, but I just wanted to share that perspective. I get that money needs to be taken into account, but it's not just about the cost. So I ask that you please help our family, our community, and our world by continuing expanding recycling options. And I'm willing to help however I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
I would just add that, just to clarify that brushy woody material does not get deposited in our landfill. That's why there is the compost center is there, and it is ground to essentially a mulch type consistency. And we are exploring options to actually improve that as well via some stormwater potential, working with DNR on trying to create more of a compost type material, which then could be utilized much better as well. So it's not just, in that sense, we would welcome all the woody brush material because we'd actually be creating a commodity. So we're going to talk about that, not tonight, obviously, but as you just kind of pay attention to that because there's some options there.
And my composting is kitchen waste.
Yeah.
It's all the scraps and vegetables and that.
Right.
I felt like I had to do that myself.
Right. Understand, totally understand.
It was before him, I think it was during the Bernie days. It was
What else?
Hi, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Natalie Donato. I work for a contractor, but I am the recycling educator for all of our municipalities, and we service Wentzville as well. We have automated cans and any questions. I had a PowerPoint that I made just kind of on, I understand keeping costs down, but the importance of recycling and how expensive that it is and how to educate so that it's clean, so that it's not contaminated, because otherwise it will all go to the landfill if there's, salad dressing left in your bottle and things like that. So I go to the cities and I educate. It's a part of our service for citizens and all kinds of stuff. So if you would like one of these, I would be happy to share it. Okay.
Just
Okay.
give him one.
You might have to share. Okay.
How did you hear about our meeting?
We put a bid in for the recycling.
The last time.
The last time.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I started 2 months ago, and I was from college.
Okay, thank you. Was there anyone else who wanted to address the council? Did you want to say something? Okay. You want to? No,
He's here for
he's
something else.
here for something else. Come on up.
I happened to be on the council at the time we instituted curbside recycling. We were doing twice a week trash pickup, and the former mayor was in love with recycling, and we basically traded one trash pickup for one recycling pickup. But we never really did a cost analysis of what it was going to cost us and what the benefits were. And, as you look at the numbers, recycling is penny wise and pound foolish. I mean, none of us in this room would do what the city's doing, putting forth, $250,000 up to $300,000 and getting back what you said last year was $45,000. We just wouldn't do that. I mean, and, Jeff's point, there are a lot of people who are very diligent recyclers. And, some people feel that it's going to save the planet. Well, I don't happen to be one of those, but I wouldn't spend the money if it was my money to spend. It's just, I think to get over Jeff's hurdle, maybe you ought to put it on the ballot and ask the citizens of Washington, after they know the particulars about how much we're spending, what it's costing, and just put it to a vote whether you want to continue curbside recycling or not. But, losing $250,000, you can spend that a lot of ways. Do a lot for youth sports. There's just, we only have a limited number of dollars, but you got a tough decision to make. It's something that we've been doing for a long time, and it's not easy sometimes to make a decision. When I was mayor, I tried, but it didn't work. Nobody was in favor of it. So just like getting rid of the landfill. Nobody was in favor of getting rid of the landfill at the time either, but we did have a deal. But it's thanks to John and Andrea and others, they've made the landfill more lucrative and manage it like it should have been managed, but it wasn't. It's managed like an enterprise fund. What else? I could stand here and talk all night, but I'm going to pass. I've talked to most
you.
everybody individually. It's a tough decision to make. It really is. And there are a lot of people who are very passionate about recycling, and but until the market for recyclables improves, I mean, there's just no place to take it. You can't, if you could just break even or come close to breaking even, but you can't do that. It's not possible the way we're doing it now. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
So before we wrap up, I guess what John was looking for tonight was to see if we could go ahead and get a consensus with the council to, I guess, to explore this further was to go ahead and get some numbers. And the only way we could do that is if we went out for bid for contracted hauling and contracted recycling. So I guess what we're looking for from the council tonight is just to give us the ability to go out and get bids, and then we can obviously bring those back to you when they come back in.
And I think it's important to reiterate, we're not proposing to change anything. We're not proposing to eliminate recycling. We're not proposing to do any of those things. All we're doing is making sure that we understand that there is another option, or there are other options, and we need to start eliminating those out of our minds to move forward until we can figure out that we're doing the best thing. Because again, if you remember how I started this, I am not confident we are at this time. 5 years ago, it may have been different when the recycling market was better. At this time, it has changed. And I'm not confident we aren't doing the best thing. But we may be. And until we get those numbers, it's hard for us to make a recommendation on how to move forward.
I think it's a good thing that we had this for educational purposes, so people know exactly what we're spending and what we're losing and where it's coming from. And it's very, very educational, I think, for many people.
It's not going to cost us anything to go off RFPs.
It will, other than staff time to put it together.
I make a motion for staff to go out for RFPs in this subject.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Patke, seconded by Sullentrup to instruct the staff to go out for RFPs. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? By your vote, you guys have a project.
Perfect.
Would you use specific specifications on what you want from the bidders?
Yes. We already have kind of the framework put together when we did our recycling one. I don't know if you recall, that was a little more a loose bid proposal. It was just to try to get a feeling for what the costs were going to be if we just did recycling. Obviously, it's kind of a little bit of a learning process, but from what I've heard from the contractors is, that's not the money. The money's not there. The money's is in a refuse collection. So it's better to bundle it, essentially, no different than your data packages and phones and whatnot. So bundle it up, get the best savings is the idea. So yeah, it would be specifics. Like I said, I think I hit them a little bit. Bulky pickup twice a year, just like we do today. Once a week.
Oh, yeah, you big.
Bulky, yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Once a week, trash pickup. Every other week, recycling pickup. You get a can. There'd be they have the option for a discount for seniors. But again, since the city's paying the bill, the numbers will work their way out a little bit because again, there's no rate change in this proposal. So if, for example, the senior bill went up on what the city pays and the other one went down and the money still was the same, it's somewhat irrelevant to how we do things to cut the check. So yeah, there's specifics.
See what it does.
That's exactly what it would be. And a lot of it, there's some savings on this routes consolidation. I've learned that a little bit, which is because we are tapped out essentially with our crew, with the need essentially to add another truck at some point here in the future. And if a contracted hauler can become more efficient and they can consolidate those routes and get into town and get out, I do think there's value in having trash trucks only running 4 days a week.
Is there any way for for the sake of our roads to keep
Yep, there's a tonnage max. It's in there.
what trucks they can run on?
Yep, got a gross vehicle weight.
Okay.
I forget what the number was, but I took
80,000?
our trash trucks, and that's the number I used.
Okay.
So the trucks are the same.
Good.
So we were looking at every little thing, so if you think of anything, email me or shoot me a text.
Yeah,
or whatever.
minimum on start time also. so you
Yep,
don't have
there
that
is.
In the morning and all that.
Minimum start time. The code does not change,
We have an ordinance.
so. There's a penalty. There's a liquidated damage penalty,
Yeah.
so,
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you, John, and everybody.
thank you all.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? We need to adjourn, I guess.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
So we have a motion by Solentrop, seconded by Patke to adjourn
Workshop?
the workshop. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? For your vote, we are adjourned. So we have about 4 minutes here before the next meeting. So I guess